let's do a final example for this session. So you want to investigate the attitude of students at your school towards the faculty's commitment to teaching. You have money to contact 500 students. Specify the exact population for your study. For example, will you include part-time students? So why would it be so important to specify your exact population? Well, the reason that you have to understand who your population is going to be is because then you can pick who are you going to sample from, or who are you going to sample. Because if you don't think you're going to include part-time students, well, then you need to make sure that part-time students aren't part of your sample. But if you do want to be able to generalize to part-time students, you have to make sure they're in your sample. So specify your exact population. Let's say, I'm going to say all undergraduates, right? Because there are graduate students too, but let's say they're not part of it. All undergraduates, and I'm assuming this was talking about college because it said faculties. So all undergraduates of all majors. And let's say only full-time. It's not really a wrong answer, right? It's who are you saying is the population? Okay, so we have undergraduates of any major, but only those that are full-time. So describe your sampling design. Will you use a stratified sample? I don't know. Do you think you should use a stratified sample? Maybe you think you should use a cluster sample? So you could try with a cluster sample, maybe make classrooms cluster samples, and you're going to randomly select from each of those clusters. So, okay, I'm going to use a cluster sample. Classrooms are the cluster. So it's really important, if you had included part-time students, if this had said you must include part-time students, well then a classroom cluster sample would not have been good, because if they're part-time, there's less likely to be in a classroom at any point, right? This might have some drawbacks in that, some majors take less classes than others, right? Maybe a chemistry major takes a lot more classes, and so they're going to be in class more often. So you have to think about that. Maybe you'd rather stratify all students based on year. Are they a freshman, a sophomore, right? How many years have they been there? And then you'll randomly select from that. Or maybe you just want to do a simple random sample. There's really nothing wrong with that, except if you're only collecting a few, you might not have a representative sample. If you're collecting 20 students, you probably want to do something more stratified. So you make sure you're getting somebody from each of the little genres, right? From each major and from each year. But if you're selecting 1,000 students, probably a simple random sample would be fine. So in this case, there isn't a correct answer. It's just really important that you when you're answering it, that you give your rationale. I would select a simple random sample because my sample size is large enough that it would be representative. Or I would select a cluster sample because everyone is equally likely to be in a classroom. But that's maybe not true. In that case, I would stratify based on year, so I get an equal representation from all years. So with this chapter, or this section, it's just really important that you write out your thought process and think about all the little details. What could you be missing? You got to play devil's advocate. Think about how could this be bias. So good luck. Thank you for visiting Educator.com, and I'll see you next time.